Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Dr. Alisha Winn, and I'm an applied cultural anthropologist, and we're going to start the presentation. And I'd like to welcome Ms. Catalina Rios, Ms. Cordesia Searcy, and Mr. Brian Knowles. And he is the director of the African American and Latino Studies Department with the Palm Beach County School System. I don't see speaker view. Okay, I see it now. And so I'm going to share my screen and we're going to get started. Do y'all see my screen? Can you all see it? Yes. Okay. All right. So this afternoon, we're going to talk a little bit about the particularly a project called the African American Oral History Project, actually the Palm Beach County African American Virtual Pilot Oral History Project. And so the title of my presentation is Through the Screen, a virtual education from our elders to a new generation. And so we are in a time, a very unique, particularly unique time during COVID pandemic, where everybody's lives in the past year and a half has been completely transformed and changed in some form. And so because of that, we've had to make a lot of adjustments in every aspects of our lives. And so particularly with our jobs, projects, education, in every way possible. And so this particular project, the African American Oral History Project, we had to shift our oral history project to virtually. And so I am a project director of this project. Ms. Catalina Rios, who's also on this line, is one of the interns that participated in this project. And then Ms. Cordesia Searcy is the youth researcher who was a participant in this project. And a little bit into the presentation, you'll get a chance to hear from them from their own words and their perspective of their experiences within this project. And so I thought it was important for us to talk about this project, but even share with our educators, our community leaders, young youth, college students about a project like this and how important it is, but particularly how we've had to be very creative in education and passing down information from generation to generation and the challenges that comes with it, but how it can be very beneficial, and we can actually do it. And it was done and successfully done, I could say. And when you hear from Catalina and Cordesia, they can tell you maybe a little bit more. And so let's get right into it. Okay, so the objectives of this particular project one was to really use a different form of education. You can easily, of course, everybody knows you'll learn about history or local African American or any type of cultural history through a textbooks or through school. However, Oral History Project is a little different. It is a kind of a non-traditional, even non-Western method, very Afrocentric in the sense of traditional African ways of learning. It's usually has been traditionally through oral histories, passing down information from the one generation to the next, and particularly from our elders. So this project is a very traditional, I would say non-traditional sense of a westernized form of education, which has been very effective throughout hundreds of years. And so, but also, how do you reimagine education during a pandemic? How do you kind of form things in such a way where students are learning, but keeping in mind the fact that you cannot be face to face? How do you pass down information that way? And then the last part is youth empowerment and the transformation of becoming knowledge holders, because if information is being passed down to the next generation, now that means young people are now the holders of knowledge of their own history and culture, and specifically in their own communities, and which is very, very important, specifically for a project like this. And so our project actually began in July of 2020. So this is a full year's project, which I tell everyone an oral history project usually lasts for about between 9 to 12 months. And given the pandemic, of course, it has taken a year's worth of work to actually produce a project like this. And so within this project, we had youth virtually interviewing elders representing 4 cities, and particularly maybe even 5 cities: West Palm Beach, Riviera Beach, Delray Beach, Pahokee, and Belle Glade. And those particular elders came from the same cities that our youth lived in at the same time too. And then the young people also conducted archival research. And in that way, it was to not only you got the narratives and the stories of elders, but you also had young people conducting research to enhance those stories that they got from the elders. And what they interviewed young people, about elders about, was life growing up in Palm Beach County, Florida, about racism in the education system, segregation, and discrimination. So in other words, what was life like growing up in Palm Beach County with a specific focus on racism in the education system? And so within this project, you have a major pandemic, you have a major health crisis. And so what does that look like, a project like this? And so everything went virtual. So it was initially started out, the plan was to do in-person interviews, in-person research, in-person work, but due to the pandemic, everything was shifted virtually online. That means that rules had to change, rules that were created in policies and guidelines about the project, the strategies used about a project like that, all had to be restructured to fit a virtual system. And when we'll talk more about that and what that was like to do. And so a project like this has many, many different benefits. One, it provides opportunities of passing down knowledge from generation to generation. It encourages connections between youth and elders. It also informs contributions of lived experiences of African Americans in Palm Beach County facing racism, and a education system, a racist education system and systematic institutions. But then also create innovative ways to tell elder stories and to highlight segregation as simply what they call it, just a way of life, simply. And what did that look like for our elders? And so this particular project, we had several activities. So the first thing the youth had to do was do some local research and local history. And so if you are preparing in that preparation to interview our elders, it is important to understand some of the local history and who, who, what, when, why, and where is very important before a young person decides to interview an elder. And this gives them an understanding of, what has occurred during that time that elder was living and what life was like for them. There was extensive interview training that took place for at least a couple of months before the actual interviews. And then there was also transcription training. So when a young person or researcher conducted research, we had a transcriber who transcribed the actual interviews, but then the youth researcher also had to review those transcriptions to ensure that it was edited properly and it was clear. And then again, as I mentioned before, there was also some archival research. And then the youth researchers had an opportunity to come up with their own ideas of how the end product should be. So there was constant involvement between the youth researchers and our interns of how these stories should be told and what it should look like. And so how does interview training look like virtually? So this is just a screenshot of when our youth researchers, along with our interns who played a major role in assisting our youth researchers in this process, and assisting in scheduling interviews, participating in the training, even how to properly interview, how to properly use the correct wording, open-ended questions versus closed-ended questions, structured interviewing versus unstructured or semi-structured, or probing to get more information from our youth, from our elders. And so there was extensive training, and all of this was done virtually. And then, of course, we interviewed, our young people interviewed 8 of our elders representing the various cities that I mentioned before. And it was a very, a very interesting experience to do so, but we were able to interview virtually. And so if you are aware, of course, there are challenges with technology with everyone, but particularly our elders who are not as familiar with Zoom or any type of technology. So our interns were very creative and very important to assist our elders in doing this and helping them, have the camera turned properly and turned to face them, the sound to make sure that they could hear the questions, or our youth researchers were presenting the questions clear enough so that they can hear. But there were some challenges, but we were able to get it done. And again, Zoom, of course, anything with technology, there are some challenges. And then even ensure some type of accuracy, because our transcriber is trying to hear, and really understand what is being said, and this is through a Zoom interview. And so sometimes you have background noise in the back, it may not be clear, and so just even trying to ensure that. Those are some of the challenges that we had. And then also asking the right questions, as a young person, you have these structured questions, but sometimes it may be a challenge to even ask additional questions. But and that's why we end up doing some follow-up question sessions or interviews, so that we can make sure that we get as much information as possible to tell these stories of our elders. So I'm gonna go right through. And so as a result of our interviews, I just wanted to share a couple of quotes that our young people got from our elders. And this is a quote from an elder from West Palm Beach talking about walking to school during segregation. As she says, things are not like they used to be. During my time, they were very segregated. They used to haul out the bus and say nigger out the bus on our way to school. We walked down Tamron and from Fern Street to 2nd or 3rd and go up to Division and then walk to school to Industrial. And so this is an example of one of our elders talking about what she encountered even just walking to school, segregation and being called out a name. Here's another example of an elder, an example of a narrative or a quote from our elders from Belle Glade about textbooks. Our textbooks were never new. We always had used textbooks. As a matter of fact, we were taught chemistry and sciences, but we did not have the equipment, as I mentioned earlier. The courses that were offered to us was centered around the kids, but not actually being able to go to college. The farmers just didn't think about that, think that Black kids, would ever be able to go to college and have a college education. So here she is talking about even just the challenge of not having good textbooks, and textbooks were passed down from the white schools to the Black schools. And we heard that very frequently from our elders. And just to give an idea of some of the struggles that the students and during this particular elder's time had to deal with in regards to education, and the expectations or lack of expectations as being educated going to the next level. And so, enough of me talking for a little bit, because I think it's very important to hear, the words of those who actually experienced this project and some of the things that they experienced and the work that they actually did. And so we have one of our own, Miss Cordesia Searcy, who's going to share a few words about some of her experiences. Now I'll start them off, and then also Catalina Rios, who's one of our interns, well, I would say one of our head interns that has been with me throughout this entire project, and share their words. And so Cordesia, I'll start with Cordesia. If you can tell me a little bit about how you decided to get into this project, what did you learn, and what did you know about Black history before and now after? And so if you would share some of those things about this project that even highlighted or stuck with you.
When I
Uh-oh.
first came to this project, I actually first heard about it. I was it took me a while to think about joining. Like, I mean, I honestly wanted to join right then and there, but I also had a lot of things going on at that moment. But honestly, now that I look back on it, I feel like it was one of the greatest decisions I ever made in my life. Due to the fact that I not only did I get to meet a group of great people, but to also learn about my history and to learn about my elders' history, and not just like in America, but in my own state. Like, you never really hear about that from your own state. So that was honestly a blessing in my opinion.
Okay. And what kind of training do you recall, like, can you share experience of your training and then what you learned before starting this project and what you learn now, in a sense?
Um, Basically, when we first started training, I had no idea how to interview people. I'm just like, ask you a question, you answer. Ask you a question again, you answer. Like, I never really knew about probing someone, to like not aggressively, but kind of passively where they don't, feel offended. Like, I had to learn that through the interview training, which I greatly appreciate. And I feel like that's like, a skill set I'm definitely gonna have to use in the future, depending on certain aspects of my career that I'm gonna have to go through.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Catalina, now you had a different type of experience because you assisted in facilitating this project, but can you share with some of the challenges with facilitating and assisting with the project, what you learned and what skills and the roles that you played in this particular project?
Yeah, so my role on the project was primarily to help it move along smoothly. And that meant scheduling interviews, facilitating the interviews. I guided the youth through the research process and just organizing our findings to support the elder story. And then one of the most challenging things I would say was keeping information organized, because information always kept coming in, like paperwork, then transcriptions, then videos, then research. So I was just trying to keep all the information organized so that we could use it later. And even after this project is over, the information still has to be organized for future use. Um, and then just that and the complete virtuality of the project, the nature of the project in itself. You mentioned earlier, there's a whole bunch of different issues that come with technology, like internet, microphone, video issues, and even things like lighting. We couldn't really be there to tell an elder, can you just sit in front of a light bulb, or move the camera this way. It was a little harder, but I do think I gained a lot of research skills, specifically archival and qualitative, when we interview them. I know, leadership skills from having to lead a couple of meetings while Dr. Winn was busy sometimes. And I even learned a little bit of budget management along the way.
Mhm.
And then just the benefits of this project, and it's just really good. There's a lot of mentoring going on. Um, we're college students, and the researchers are high schoolers getting ready to graduate. So there's a lot of mentoring going on, even outside of the project. It was, FAFSA and college applications and SAT. Sometimes those subjects would come up. Um, and just passing down information. Um, through the project, I don't know if you mentioned it before, we did lose one of our elders, and that's information that would have never gotten recorded if we didn't interview. And there's so much that we can get from that. And even from an immigrant perspective, um, there's a lot of history I have to learn to just even become a citizen. And this isn't part of the history I have to learn. So I think there's a lot, even me not being African American, that I can get from this. So yeah, that was it.
Great, thank you. And then one last question for Cordasia. if as you're graduating, because Cordasia is a graduating senior from Atlantic High School, is that correct? In Delray Beach? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. And so congratulations to you. So just one quick question. So as you're leaving and moving to the next level, what is there anything you would like to say, anyone a young person who may consider or might consider a project like this? What would you say to them, or who is not a part of a project like this?
I would say that it would definitely be a great experience for them to join a project like this, because like they literally get to immerse themselves in so much history. Like, you wouldn't want that to know more information about your background and about others. Like, that's just, I just feel like it's something that's really important that a lot of young people should really be looking into, and that you may even find a bunch of opportunities um, while going through this type of experience. Like, I really feel like you will gain a lot of opportunities that you may not have even thought about in the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Great. Good. Well, thank you. And I appreciate it for Cordasia and Catalina. By the way, Catalina was actually a graduating senior from Palm Beach Atlantic University, college student. And our other two interns were also students at Palm Beach Atlantic who just recently graduated and on this past year. So thank you all for sharing in your own words of a project like this. Okay, so now just to give, in addition to Cordasia, I wanted to add a couple more perspectives from youth after finishing this project. And this is from a youth researcher from West Palm. And she said, it really changed my perspective of elders, because at first I thought elders were people who just tell random stories to give kids candy and stuff like that. But like by watching and interviewing other elders, I see that we shouldn't take them for granted. Like, we should get to know their stories and stuff like that. I learned how to interview. I learned how to communicate better. I learned how to research information farther than I've ever researched before. And I learned how, like, their lifestyles as a college student and stuff like that, that it's giving me information to be ready for when I graduate. And so this is one example, in addition to Cordasia, of how it helps build certain skills and prepare you for the next step, even college. Another researcher from West Palm Beach, she says, it changed the way that I like where I live. Like hearing elders from Palm Beach County talking, like streets that I know, like talking about how this used to be there. I guess in that way, definitely researching, interview skills, brainstorming skills, and communication skills. And so this project, built more than just getting the stories and the narrative of our elders, but it also assists youth to our young people to not only learn about their history and their culture in their own communities, but also gain necessary skills needed, but then appreciate their own history in their neighborhood. And so, so again, when we talk about, skill sets, I look at it also as empowerment, because it seems to, from my observation, and I'm sure that Cordasia and Catalina can attest to this, and our other participants, where it gives this sense of knowledge. And when you have some sense of knowing where you're from and who your community represents, and you represent that community as well, I believe that it empowers our young people to even give confidence to even move forward and be successful. And so, as you can see, you see experiences in communication and computer skills, analysis and editing. At the end of this project, all of our researchers, they put together a resume in addition to our interns, because they have accumulated so many skills that in that way that they were able to add those skills to their resume. So each of them walked away with adding more to their resume for the next level, whether it's a college education or a trade or even a job. There's a greater appreciation of the past. There's a greater respect for our elders. But then most of all, there's a sense of knowledge of African American history or Black history in their own neighborhoods and their own communities, which is just an awesome thing in itself to build self-worth and identity. And so so one of the things that we wanted to do, let me go back here, is that our young people, also our elders and our youth and our interns, it was very important to get input about, you know, what our young people would like to see and what they would want to contribute to this project. So it wasn't just, okay, how do we want the end product to look? So it wasn't just myself or our funders or our educators who are working on this project, you know, just put forth their ideas, but also our youth putting forth the ideas of what they would like to see and how they would like these stories of our elders to be told, experiencing education, the educational system with racism and segregation and discrimination. So here's just a couple of where we talked about, and here's some of the things they shared about featuring quotes of elders related to the topics digitally as a mural. Another one is a documentary about our elders with youth narrating. And then the last one is an Instagram page and a link about the project Youth and Elders. And so we wanted to make sure that we followed at least at most of the ideas that they shared. So as a result, we will be conducting a documentary, actually almost finished with a brief documentary about our elders with some narration with our youth. We are featuring some of the quotes digitally, and the mural is something that may take a little bit more work and time, but it was an excellent idea that I brought forth to our funders who really love that idea. And then lastly, an Instagram page in which we do have. And so let me go back. And this is our Instagram page. And this is just a screenshot of what our Instagram page looks, a PBCAAO project. And so, and on this Instagram page, it highlights, it gives you a background of the project. It gives you where you can meet the elders. And here's just another screenshot of what it looks like, and each of our elders, and has a little bio about each elder. And then if you play, you click on the page, you will hear an audio of our elders talking and speaking about a specific topic, whether it's about racism or segregation, or it might be advice to our youth, because each elder was asked by our youth researchers about any advice they would like to share with the youth, and each of them shared advice that they gave, and so you can hear that advice on the Instagram page by audio. And then, as Catalina did mention, that how important it is to capture these stories, because, you know, we are interviewing and talking with elders, and unfortunately during this project, in December of last year, one of our elders, Mr. Alfred Zach Strawn, who was a major community activist, he was a head of the NAACP during his time, he passed away. And so and actually Cordasia, who's on our line, is one of our researchers that had the great opportunity to actually interview Mr. Strawn. And so this is a prime example how important it is to preserve the narratives and get the stories told and preserved and recorded, because our elders may leave, and we don't know when, and all of us will, but, you know, so we're so grateful that we had the opportunity to capture his story, and they're recorded. So we're really looking forward to the additional final product of this project to share these narratives. And so here, a project like this, of course, there's an opportunity to learn our history, particularly local history. It is an opportunity to preserve our history, but it is also an opportunity to present something positive and something very positive and visibly positive in the community. And then it is also an opportunity for not only to build skills, but for our young people to develop resumes for jobs and the next steps to be successful. And so for our educators out there who may be watching this video, our administration, or even community leaders, or those who may be thinking about something like this. So how do we, how can we do something like this? Or you might can't do something like this on a larger scale, but on a smaller scale, you may be able to do something like this. And one of the opportunities to do something like this is where you have one of your students interview an elder in your family, in your community. That might be something that to consider, or a student interview his or her teacher at the school. And then utilize, historic sites in your neighborhood to visit a site, or conduct a community or research project in the classroom. And I know Mr. Knowles and I talked about this, where there could be some curriculum opportunities for our teachers and our students to do on a smaller scale, because this is a big project that we're doing, but you can definitely modify it to fit your interest and students' interests in the classroom to do so. And so one of the things that my last thing is to, as far as recommendations for a project like this, and is casting a larger net with recruitment. This was a pilot project, so we had we had a total of 5 young people, but we really want to expand this. So this is something that we definitely would talk about, or incorporate it into the school system. That would be larger recruitment. Assigning an elder volunteer who grew up in the neighborhood to assist, to even help with a project like this will be something that would be considered. Extending the project for a year. This project was supposed to be 3 months, then it got extended to 6 months. Now it's a year. So it just shows how important, how a project like this, it takes some time, particularly on the scale that we're doing it. And then patenting copyright materials, and that's something that would be related to curriculum, and how that looks, and even incorporating that into something that is copywritten as an actual curriculum form. And that's something that we can definitely, as a future thing, in addition to that. And so that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. This is the email of our project email, as well as my email, if you like to get in touch with me if you have any questions related to this project. But I'd like to thank Ms. Catalina Rios and Ms. Cordesia Cersei for their participation, and Mr. Knowles for always supporting and encouraging me to to present on these topics and how important they are to share. So and I'll open up the floor for any questions that anyone may have.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment, if I may. Now, to Winn, once again, this is incredible. All your work is always amazing. The stuff that you're doing in the community, that you're doing with students, and just being one of those leading figures in our community, making sure that we ensure that we preserve our history and culture, is I don't know, it's beyond what I can even put within words and articulate. So we just thank you for that, first of all. And I'm just sitting here listening to the presentation, and even before you did it, I was aware of the project and everything, and stemming from last year, right at the beginning of the pandemic, and it just fits in perfectly in what we're trying to accomplish overall in this conference. Making sure that we bring in Afrocentric values, traditions, and just some of the things which are, just indigenous to people of African descent, and bringing in an oral history project, because our history, that's how we preserved our history for thousands of years, through oral tradition, and bringing in back that oral tradition into the classroom. And I'm listening to some of the things that Ms. Rios and also Ms. Cersei mentioned, and how, Cersei mentioned something about skills. These are different skills and how to communicate and how to have conversations and so forth. How do you help her develop that skill, and making, interviews and speaking to people and so forth, is one of those things that we're missing in school. So not only are students being able to kind of move with this idea, because this right here is a real pragmatic project with kids, where students can any teacher throughout our district can incorporate in almost any subject area, technically, right? Mm-hmm. and how she talked about, using that skill and just developing that skill. And one of the things that Ms. Rio said is that, she's not African American, but yet she still benefited from this project. Not only skill wise, she got a chance to understand somebody else, understand
Mhm.
another person's culture, and understand somebody else's experiences. And I think that's where we go wrong as a society, when we don't have conversations. And when
Yeah.
we don't understand each other's experience, and the only thing that we depend on to understanding the experience is the media, social media, or someone's lies about somebody. So that perpetuates hate, discrimination, and stereotyping and bigotry.
Mhm.
Um, and it kind of goes back to anybody who will push back and say, when we're talking about a whole conference for Black students, and just why just Black students, but understanding that even if we focus on one particular subgroup of students, that we're still doing work that's going to have a universal impact
Mhm.
on all students. Like, for example, Ms. Rios brought a perfect example. She articulated it very well. And I thank you for that. And the things that you articulated too, Ms. Cersei. Sometimes we undermine our kids and
Mhm.
and just kind of, sell them short because we ain't ready and we don't have the capacity to understand what they're seeing and understanding.
Yeah.
So I just really just like this project, and it's a good example of how, you know, how Black students, first of all, we have sometimes our Black students have a disconnect from their own community.
Mhm.
And how you said that some of the kids thought the elders was just making up stories and just telling stories because they like to talk. I
Right.
used to think that, older people just like to run their mouth. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
But as I got older, I gained that appreciation of understanding those stories. And, you all had the honor of interviewing one of our leading activists in the community, Mr. Zach Strawn.
Mhm.
And if it wasn't because of this project, there was a lot of stuff that he probably expressed that we wouldn't have
Mhm.
because of a project like this. So I just
Yeah.
thank you for your work, and all of our teachers that are tuned in is going to be watching this, and our educators, community members, and how something like this is a pragmatic project with skills, with students are developing skills. Um, and they're writing, they're reading, you're exercising cross-curricular skills that are within one course. And if you teach science, you can go out, interview elders in the community that are doing work in science, interview elders in the community, have agricultural experience, and some of the things that they can share that you can do research that way. And last thing is that this was incredible because our students were able to do this during the pandemic, right?
Right.
So
Right.
when our teachers were scrambling and our school system was scrambling, like, okay, what do we do now? That everything is not, now we not relying on textbooks and classrooms in a traditional model of education. This right here is something that can take place in the classroom, outside of the classroom, discarded regardless of condition and variables.
Yeah.
So once again, amazing project. Thank you to young ladies for joining and hopping on. And now y'all gonna be famous when y'all get out there when this hits. Now, seriously, our institute last year hit an international audience.
Mhm.
So, um, and that's it. That's the end of what I'm going to say. Dope
Oh,
project. I love it. That's it.
thank you, Mr. Knowles. I'm so glad, and I'm so glad you were able to get on because you said something that was so key that Catalina did say, because it is beyond what we think it is. Like I can attest the amount of skills that Miss Catalina learned in a year is unbelievable. Like she mentioned budgeting. Like, I mean, I remember at Palm Beach Lakes we had a life management skills course. I don't think they have that anymore, but everything that basically that I learned in that class, she learned that, and some. And it didn't matter what background she was. So she got, triple fold of amount of skills of learning not only the history, but a skill set of management. She can actually manage a project now, and she just graduated from college, but she can manage an entire project, from and just earned a bachelor's degree. So it does, like you said, it's more than beyond, oh, well, she's not of African American. No, it's the core values that you need to be successful in the next level to your career and whatever you decide to do. And so, and even Cordasia at the same time, you know, there are things that Catalina learned from Cordasia in addition to Cordasia learning from Catalina. And there are certain things that I learned from them, or even just how to be creative. Like I learned how to be creative from them and their ideas and how they think. And even as we're putting together this documentary, they were instrumental in how this documentary should be, because I asked them, how long will you sit and listen to a documentary? Would it be 30? No. Would it be how long? There's like 10 minutes. That's the law. Okay, so we based our documentary put together and based upon what they would be willing to sit through and listen to. You know, I said, how long would your friends go on Instagram and look at this page? Yes. Okay. Well, you know, so that was, so they were process their whole creativity, but even technical skills were involved in this project in every way possible. So it is beyond, and then goes back to that non-traditional way of learning, that not, you know, you're not just reading a textbook and you got a teacher up there teaching you something, but the pandemic forced us to be creative in how we should do this thing. You know, we adjusted. When I remember when I got Catalina on this project, I said, you will be learning and creating and shifting as we go. Are you okay with that? Because this is something we've never really done before. And she was on board, and she can attest to it. Every day we were shifting and adjusting because we had to do this thing all virtual. And I've never done a virtual oral history project before, ever. You know?
You know, and you're right. You know, that the pandemic, you know, we took something that was an unfortunate circumstance, horrible circumstance,
Yeah.
and was able to identify and discover some new ways of doing things. And that's why it's so important when people say get back to normal, is that normal didn't serve us all right in a lot of ways, especially our students of color in our district. So, you know, some of the creativity and some of the ingenuity that was forced out of us because of the pandemic, you know, I think we should just kind of keep rolling with it and further develop that and go with that. And one of the things that you said too is that this created a whole collective experience, that the students were learning from the teacher and the teacher was learning from the students. Where the students were able to feel empowered because now they have a voice in the classroom. Now they have a voice in this process. You know, I talk to kids all the time and said they're sick of worksheets, they're sick of workbooks, they're sick of looking at presentations. They want to have conversations, they want to do hands-on stuff. And we see how so many life skills are apprehended from this one kind of project. And, you know, the skies is the limit, you know, and beyond the sky's the limit from doing projects like these in our classrooms. So
yeah, well, good, thank you. Well, just before we close out, because I don't want to keep anybody too long, but does Catalina and Cordasia, do you all have anything to share or add, or?
Well, I just wanted to add something that Mr. Knowles mentioned about, you know, we can expand from this. Obviously, I was watching, it's a different subject. I was watching you know, a child welfare webinar about COVID. And, you know, one of the panelists said, I hope stuff doesn't go back to how it was. You know, it's not like COVID's over and stuff like this doesn't happen ever again. It's a different format of doing things. And I think even though being in person could have facilitated some things, the lengths and the extent to where we could go is much farther in a virtual format. So I hope people are able to build on the format of this project further than COVID.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. Cordasia, you don't have to. No pressure. Good. Okay. Okay. Well, this definitely concludes our presentation. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. I'll be happy to answer questions or even go into this more detail of how this project was done. Just for time's sake, we wanted to kind of have an accelerated summary of this project. But if you have any questions or comments, feel free to contact myself. And thank you again, Mr. Knowles, for inviting us on to share. And hopefully our educators can take some of this or all of this and impact the lives of young people in themselves.
Hey, and just real quick, you know, you said people reaching out to you, so an email address or something like that. But you know, people can reach out to me as well. And just to mention, remember, you inspired one of our teachers to create a whole project at Coniston Middle School, which is highlighted as one of the sessions in this year's institute. So you'll be able to see
Oh,
that.
wow. Oh,
How they
wow.
had never heard of the Storm of 28 Memorial, which is right here on Tamarind and West Palm Beach, and how she took her kids. And you see the
That's
garden
right.
that's over there now.
Yeah, that's right.
That was directly inspired by your presentation last year on the Summit Institute.
Wow. Wow.
And
Awesome.
us using that virtual platform to get information out there to a wide audience. So thank you for that, Dr. Winn.
Well, thank you. Okay. Well, that's great to know. That's encouraging. So thank you. So this, and you provided this platform to do so. So we thank you for this opportunity to share. So thank you so much, Mr. Knowles. And and with this concludes this presentation. Thank you again. I'll be following up with you young ladies and you, Mr. Knowles, very soon, because we're still wrapping some things up, but this summer you will see more representations of this project. You definitely can check out our Instagram. If Catalina, if you can share that Instagram again, because I can't remember all those letters. If you can remember, Catalina, tell it to you in a few seconds, but be sure to check out our Instagram, which is up right now. And then there's going to be a documentary that's going to be coming out actually next month about this project and some other forms of how we tell this story. It's coming out all this summer, so be on the lookout for it. Catalina, you muted. You're muted.
So just look up at PBCAAOH project on the search bar on Instagram, and you'll be able to find the project.
Okay, one more time.
PBCAAOH project on Instagram.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you all. And we'll be in touch. Take care. Bye-bye.